Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Act Premium Cloud Training. This is Act in the web. And in our previous tutorial, we showed you how to get logged in to your Act web database. I'm logged in, and when Act opened on the cloud or in a web browser, this is what you will most likely see when you first open Act. So for right now, what I'm going to ask you to do is ignore this screen and do the following. Over on the left-hand side, we're going to see where it says Contacts. I'm going to have you click on that. Now, part of my training included some training in the Act desktop software. Now, the Act desktop software and Act Premium Cloud look very similar. And many, or I'd say about 80% of the things you do in one, you can do in the other. So I showed you some things in the Act desktop version, some training in the Act desktop version, and if you haven't watched that, I'd urge you to go watch it now, because some of the things that I discussed there, I'm not going to go over again in this training. I'm talking about fundamentals, just getting around the software. Once you've gone through that training, then come back here and visit this training. Open up Act in the cloud, and now I think you'll have a better way of approaching this, greater insight into what to expect once you get into the cloud. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw your attention up top to where it says Lookup, and I'm going to click on Lookup, and I'm going to go to the first option, something called the My Record. Now, I discussed this previously, but the My Record is all of your contact information. When you open Act, it should typically go right to your contact information first. If there's 1,000 contacts in Act, it's going to open to your contact info. If there's 20, it's going to open to your contact info. So the reason I'm showing you this is just in general, this is the first thing you're going to see. And now we can talk about some first steps and things you need to know about working with Act in the cloud. First of all, I am using Internet Explorer to get in to my Act cloud account. You can use Chrome. You can use Firefox. You can use whichever browser you want, but something about web pages in general. Web pages, and that's what this is, it's a web page of your data. Web pages render or look different in different browsers. That's what makes the challenge of designing things for the web unique, because you have to design them so they look proper in each type of browser. So although I'm using Internet Explorer, and as of today, this is my preference. This is what I found works best for me personally. Now, the one thing I'll suggest to you is that if you ask 3 people what they like, you might get 3 different answers. I like Internet Explorer. Other people like Firefox. Some people like Chrome. So on that note, it's really just personal preference and what you like to work with. Now, don't hesitate to try to open your database in each browser just to see what it looks like and how it might function slightly different. So, the next thing is I want to give you some general tips that are really not Act software tips, but general tips about working in a browser. So, again, think of this as a web page. Now, because we're in a web page, one of the things I can do in this browser is you'll notice up top, I have some toolbars up top and some tabs. One of the things I can do if I want to remove those tabs or make this a bigger screen is on my keyboard I have an F11 key, Frank 11. The keys typically run across the top of your keyboard, starting with the F1 key all the way to the F12 key. If I press the F11 key, what it does is it enlarges the screen. It takes all the items from the top away. If I take my pointer and move it up off the screen, you'll see it will bring it back. If I want to bring those back so I always see them, I just press the F11 key as well. Now that is not an Act trick, that is a web browser trick. And it just moves some information so it doesn't distract you. It's completely up to you, you don't have to do that. The second thing I want to teach you about is the following. When you're in a web browser, you can reduce the size of what you see. In other words, you can zoom in or zoom out. And the way you do that is on your keyboard you have a control key, CTRL. When you hold that control key down and then press the minus key, what you will find is you will be able to zoom out on the screen. So in other words, it made everything smaller. To reverse that, you can press the control key down and press plus to bring it back to where it was. If I want to make it bigger, I'm going to press plus again. And you're going to see it made it so big, things started to get hidden under the bottom half of Act. So this is something based on the size of your monitor, based on vision requirements. These are things you can change, and this is one of the things that makes Act in a web browser really interesting. Now also keep in mind that people have all different kinds of size monitors. So if I have a large monitor, I have a lot more green space over to the right-hand side, and I'll show you that by zooming out again. Versus if someone has a smaller resolution monitor, either a desktop screen or a laptop, they're going to see less of this screen space way over to the right. So one of the great things about working with Act in the web is it has some flexibility you don't have with the desktop version of Act. So the next thing I want to talk about is when you're working in Act, you have some other things that you can set, such as preferences. We're going to get into that in a different tutorial, but we're going to talk about this in our next tutorial a little bit more about what are the next steps. What do you do when you want to enter a contact? And we'll go into some of the distinctions between Act Desktop and Act for Web. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. You have a great day. Bye now.